Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Unquestionably Raw podcast. We have a special daytime preview show for you. So we've got the Denver Nuggets NBA season preview, and joining us is special guest Adam Mades of DenverStiffs.com, Nylon Calculus, and the host of the Pickaxe Podcast. Adam, thanks so much for coming on with us.
Thanks a bunch for having me on. This should be fun.
Absolutely. So I want to roll into the first question. It's kind of a three-part question. So I'm going to kind of give it, one section at a time. So looking at the Nuggets and their depth chart, Adam, who do you think will, be the starting five, and who are some of the key rotation guys off the bench?
So I think the starting five is set, at least four of the positions. Emmanuel Mudiay is going to get the start. And he'll probably be the starter for at least most of the year, no matter what happens. I expect he'll have a little bit of a leap this year and be a lot better, but he's kind of, the face of the future of the franchise. So he's going to get the start. Gary Harris will be the starter at the shooting guard position. They just drafted Jamal Murray. They've got Will Barton, who was a Sixth Man of the Year candidate last year, but Gary Harris, I think, is unquestionably the number one option at shooting guard, at least to start the season. Danilo Gallinari is the team's best player. He'll start at small forward. Nikola Jokic will be the starting center. Had a tremendous year last year as a rookie, and he'll be a big focal point of the offense. So the only position that's up for grabs, or that maybe has a little bit of doubt, is the power forward slot. That was Kenneth Faried's position last year. He was the starting power forward, and actually for the last couple of years. But Malone has actually – head coach Mike Malone has started Nikola Jokic at power forward and Jusuf Nurkic at center throughout two of the three preseason games. So there's a chance that they might go to that lineup and kind of start two centers at the 4 and the 5. But I expect that's more of a preseason experiment, and that they'll probably go with Kenneth Faried once the regular season comes around.
Okay. Matt, do you think Faried gets that starting power forward spot?
I do. I think it should be Jokic and Nurkic in the starting lineup, but I forgot where I was reading it at, but I saw something about Kenneth Faried not wanting to come off the bench.
Right.
So I think he may. Yeah, I think they may, just to prevent problems, they may just start him. And if they lose, of course they're trying to shop him. But if they start really losing, then you can say, hey, we're losing. Let's change it up.
Faried is a prime six-man candidate because he's an energy guy. He's a rebounder. Mm-hmm. He's not a skilled player. He doesn't have a jump shot or a post game or anything like that, but he just hustles and kind of makes plays. So that's usually what you do with your bench rotation. He would go really well alongside Will Barton, Wilson Chandler. I think that's like an athletic 2-3-4 combo. Mm-hmm. But as you said, he doesn't like to come off the bench. Oh. There's been not the kind of guy that I think wants to make that sacrifice. So Malone might force his hand, though. Last year, I think he wanted, obviously, to appease him, and he probably was the best 4 on the team. But this year, I think there's guys that maybe might fit a little bit better. So it'll be interesting to follow, see which way Malone goes with it.
And, if they go Jusuf Nurkic, they're not really losing much defensively either.
Right. Well,
and they gain a little offensively.
I think the problem with their roster is that they only have two centers. They have Jokic and Nurkic. And if you start both of them, that means you're going to have some minutes with no center. Mm-hmm. Kenneth Faried might be your backup center or play 5 to 10 minutes. And I actually kind of like that small ball lineup. Kenneth Faried's advanced stats throughout his career have actually been better as a center than they have been as a power forward. But I don't think you can do that for more than 5 minutes a game, maybe 10 minutes in certain circumstances. So for me, it makes sense to bring Nurkic off the bench and maybe to start Jarrell Arthur even, and then have Faried and Nurkic as the backup front court. But I kind of expect Faried to start.
And I was right there with you. I'm glad you brought up Jarrell Arthur because I think that obviously Coach Mike Malone really loves Arthur's game. I think with his ability to stretch the floor, he would actually bring a little bit of what Nurkic could do, but at the same time can bring a little bit of grittiness there as well. So I think I actually like Faried coming off the bench, but I don't think it actually happens per se. So
I would bet not to start the season, but there's a really good chance as the season goes on that happens. I think as they start to get more and more minutes with different combinations, I could see it.
Absolutely. So that brings us into part B, so to speak, of the first question. So with the three rookies drafted, Malik Beasley, Juan Hernan-Gomez, and Jamal Murray, what are the expectations for each of them this season?
Absolutely no expectations for Juancho Hernan-Gomez or Malik Beasley. I think those guys are expected to be end-of-the-bench guys this year. They've impressed during the preseason and through Summer League, but they've impressed as they look like prospects, but they still look like rookies. Jamal Murray's the guy that's going to get the most run, at least early on in the season and probably throughout the season. He's still third probably on the depth chart at shooting guard behind Gary Harris and Will Barton. But he can slide over and play a little bit of point guard. He calls himself a point guard. In every interview, he says, I'm more of a point guard than a shooting guard. I disagree with that, but I think he's more of a playmaking shooting guard. But so he can play some backup minutes at point guard behind Moutier and behind Jameer Nelson, who, by the way, Jameer Nelson has really looked bad for the last year. And in preseason, I think he's really struggled and kind of fallen off a cliff. So there's a good chance that Jamal Murray will get a lot of minutes at point guard.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, what are your thoughts?
I agree. I think Beasley and Hernan-Gomez, maybe they'll get some spot minutes here and there. Probably you'll see some time in the D-League for those guys just to get them some playing time. Jamal Murray, I think he probably will be the backup point guard just because, Jameer Nelson is old and he really doesn't do much anymore. But I think with Murray, I don't think there will be a lot of expectations for him. Just come in, hold down the backup point guard spot, play solid defense, make some open shots, just as long as he doesn't try to do that hero ball like he tended to sometimes do at Kentucky. Limit the hero ball stuff.
That guy he's a gunner and a scorer. And not a gunner, I don't think in a bad way necessarily, but that guy he's in there to score. That's his best skill.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the Nuggets need that. They have a lot of guys that are role players. They don't have a lot of score. That's why Will Barton last year, I think he was the team's second highest scorer. Mm-hmm. He averaged like 3 points a game in Portland, and he was the Nuggets' second leading scorer, but that's just because they need guys to go in and put up buckets. So Jameer Nelson, the one thing I'll say about him, Moutier really started the season pretty shaky last year, November and December, and Jameer Nelson was just kind of a stabilizing force for the Nuggets. But as the team kind of grew together, I think that I don't think they needed him nearly as much, and I'm not sure they need him as much this year.
Mm-hmm. And last year, down the stretch, Moutier did start to shoot the ball better. His three-point stroke looked a lot better, and he wasn't making as many dumb decisions.
10% better in the last 2 months on three-point field goal percentage and 1 assist per game less than he was in the first half of the season. One turnover less. So he cut his turnovers and he upped his field goal percentage quite a bit.
Absolutely, and I think with Nelson, he's more of a locker room voice kind of at this point. And with Jamal Murray, I would look at, as far as expectations go in the season, I mean, just do your thing scoring-wise, and if you can get those assist numbers, in a consistent assist-to-turnover ratio in a good spot, I think that they'll be happy with that.
Jameer, the one thing about Jameer is he does not want to be the locker room guy. 2 years in a row now at Media Day, people have asked him, how do you feel about being a mentor to Moutier? Because obviously Moutier's, the guy going forward. And he has said – last year he was polite about it, saying, I'm not here to be a mentor, I'm here to be a player. This year he was a lot less polite. I mean, you could tell it annoys him. He said his quote, and I'm going to mess this up, so it's not a direct quote, but it's something like, I'm not a mentor, I'm not a camp counselor, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a dad, So he's very adamant that he's here to play basketball, not to teach young guys.
Wow. Well, maybe Stan Van Gundy can take him in Detroit and kind of fill that spot for Reggie Jackson possibly.
100%. That would be perfect. He knows the system. He knows the coach. I think that's an absolute deal I almost expect to happen, or at least think there's a good chance it would happen.
Yeah. So last part of the first question, which of the camp guys, if any of them, out of Jarnell Stokes, Nate Walters, DJ Kennedy, I wouldn't really say Jakar Sampson, Axel Tupan are camp guys, but they played with the Nuggets last year, kind of on the roster bubble. And then Robbie Hummel, which, if any of those guys, make the team?
I have absolutely no read on this. I would have said it would have been Jakar Sampson or Axel Tupan just because they were with the team last year. They liked him enough to keep him over the summer and to keep him, they extended him. First it was a 10-day contract, then they extended him for the rest of the year. So I don't really have a read. I would have guessed those guys, but in the preseason through 3 games, Jarnell Stokes and Robbie Hummel are the only guys that are getting minutes. So I don't know if that says something or if that's just out of necessity or what have you, but those guys have played, I think, in all 3 games, and the other guys haven't. So if I were to guess what I think the team needs, Wilson Chandler and Danilo Gallinari are great players, but they have injury history throughout their career, and the Nuggets are really thin behind them at small forward. Mike Miller is probably the next small forward, but he's really more of a coach. He's more of a coach at this point than a player. So I would think that they would try to go for a 3, and that means Axel Toupane, Jakar Sampson, Robbie Hummel would probably be the 3 guys I would pick.
Okay. Matt, any thoughts on the camp guys?
The 2 guys I thought would be that I'd go with either Sampson or Hummel. Those would be the 2 I would think of. I like the way Hummel shoots the ball, too, so he can provide some outside shooting for him.
He's a hustle guy. I know that, and I know Malone liked him just during the pre-training camp scrimmages and stuff. He was saying that he stood out, but I haven't seen much from him in preseason.
Yeah. The only thing with Hummel you got to worry about his knees because he had the ACL tears and stuff in college. Yeah, when he was so you got to worry about that.
Yeah, he had a good season last year over in Europe. Of course, shot the ball pretty decently, and that's what I'd kind of look for if it was me, either Hummel or Jarnell Stokes. I've always been intrigued by Jarnell Stokes, and especially last season, really did well in the D League. I'd like to see what he can do. The only thing that I worry about with Stokes making the team is you've got Arthur there in front of him, of course, Fareed. And you've got Gallinari and Chandler that can kind of move over, as well as Jokic that can move over. So I think, just trying to get minutes and just a little bit overcrowding there in the power forward spot might work against him.
Pete,
Jakar Sampson.
Yeah, I was going to get to Sampson being a Sixer guy.
Yeah. I think he can do some things defensively. He's not there to be a scorer. You could put him out there. I think he has a good shot at making it. Nate Walters, I liked him. Of course, he played. He did not play well with the Clippers in the summer league, but he wasn't there. He's not a summer league guy. He was just there to kind of get his name back out there. But I think he can run a team. I think he ends up going probably back over to Europe for another season. And DJ Kennedy's, he basically is a D League guy through and through. So it'll be interesting to kind of see who they go with.
One note about the Nuggets is that they're one of the 6 teams that does not have a D-League affiliate. So they have to send their players – if they do send them down to the D-League, they have to borrow a team basically to send them to. So this is the perfect year to have a D-League team because, as you mentioned, they have Wancho. They've got Jamal Murray who could even go down there. They've got Beasley. Yeah. They have guys they could field an interesting team and also just get minutes for those guys. But unfortunately – they'd be sending those to Fort Wayne or San Antonio or some other team.
Yeah, absolutely. So going into the second question, depth is intriguing on this team because you can kind of move some pieces around different positions and kind of play guys in different spots. How will Mike Malone be able to keep these guys happy? And do you think that maybe there could be a trade to come somewhere along the line this season, maybe a Kenneth Faried or Will Barton to kind of free up some minutes if a guy like Jamal Murray really exceeds expectations and, kind of make some room for the future for Wancho to get some minutes maybe next year?
So the first part of your question is about the depth, and you're right, that's a strength and a weakness, I think, of the team because there are so many guys that Malone's going to need to get a look at this year to see how they do. But I do think it'll be an interesting balance for him. But one thing to Malone's credit, I think Kenneth Faried played 20 minutes a game last year. He's maybe the most high-profile guy or second most high-profile guy behind Danilo Gallinari, but he was still playing reserve minutes even though he was starting. So I don't think he's afraid to play guys and sit certain guys, but it is going to be a challenge for him just because there's so many guys on the roster with a really diverse skill set. And I actually asked him this at practice the other day. I said, is it difficult to coach a roster that has so much versatility and so many differences? Because if you play the 2 centers at the same time, that's a different style than if you play Kenneth Faried at center and Danilo Gallinari at power forward. That's almost a completely different style of basketball. And he said that is a challenge, and it's something that they actually are working on, going from one possession to the next and completely changing the style of play. So that to that extent, I think it will be a challenge for the Nuggets to get everybody minutes and to play different styles. As far as trades go, I think it's been rumored for a long time that Kenneth Faried is on the trade block, and I think the Nuggets would like to part with him if they had a suitor. I don't know that they're necessarily in panic mode to where they feel they have to trade him for peanuts, but they're very, very open, I think, to fielding offers on Kenneth Faried. I would expect, I don't know if it's going to happen at the trade deadline, but I would expect he's not here at the start of training camp next year. So whether that means in season, at the deadline, or at the draft, I think at some point Kenneth Faried will be with a different team.
Okay. Matt, what do you think of maybe a possible Kenneth Faried maybe move, or any thoughts on some of the depth on the team?
I think if they can move him, I think they probably will. Their depth is a good thing, but keeping guys happy, is a tough thing to do. Someone's always going to be upset. They all feel they deserve to get the minutes. So that's almost an impossible task. You just have to manage it the best you can. And I think Coach Malone can do that because, as we know, he got along with DeMarcus Cousins. So anything's possible if you can get along with Cousins. So, but I don't think you want to move Will Barton, though, right now, because you got Wilson Chandler, but he's injury prone. He's been hurt basically the last 2 years. So do you want to move Will Barton at this point? I wouldn't think you do that. And I think Chandler's probably third on that small forward depth chart. He might not play anyways, unless maybe in a small ball lineup you put him at the 4.
I think the thing about Wilson Chandler is he's 6'8", athletic and strong, and Will Barton is skinny as a rail, 6'5". So against some of your taller small forwards, Will Barton really struggles defensively, and that's where Wilson Chandler, I think, has more value. But to your point about Will Barton, he's both a good player, a young player, and he's on an insanely great contract, $3 million a year for this year and next. That's peanuts. That's way undervalued what he's worth. So you look at Faried's contract, not a terrible deal, but not a good deal. And then you look at Will Barton's, it's a great deal. You pair those together, and I think then that trade becomes a little bit more enticing.
Absolutely. I would say, just kind of looking at it, maybe not move Barton right now. I think Faried probably more towards the deadline, depending on how they start. I mean, if they're struggling, if the Nuggets are struggling at that point, they can look to move maybe Faried, kind of get some pieces back. Barton, he's kind of a bench, spark scorer. We finally got to see what he could do with minutes last season. I wouldn't think he would probably go anywhere unless it starts hindering the development of Murray, maybe if he plays the 2, or with Gary Harris. Basically Harris is going to be possibly injured to start the season. I'm hoping he's there to start the year at the 2. If not, Barton fits seamlessly in starting at the 2 to begin the year, and they can kind of go from there.
Yeah, I think if the Nuggets traded Will Barton this season, they would lose. They would lose maybe 3 or 4 wins. He's that valuable to the team this year because he scores so well, and they need that. So that's the type of trade that maybe they would make towards the end of the year if the playoffs were looking out of reach or something. But it's just something to keep your eye on.
And he provides a lot of energy off that bench too,
and rebounds too. He's a great rebounder. Offensively, he's a very, very good player.
So going into the third question, basically the continued development of Moutier, of course, at point guard, Gary Harris at the 2, and then the upfront combo of Jokic and Nurkic. That's a vital piece of what the team is trying to do this season. They want to make sure they develop the guys, get the most out of them. What specifically do you think each guy needs to do to kind of elevate their games this season?
With Emmanuel Moutier, he's got to finish at the rim better. He was one of the worst at field goal percentage in the restricted area. That played a big part in why he had such a bad offensive efficiency from all over the court, was because he can't finish at the rim. He's 6'5". He's really strong. I think it was as much a rookie thing and a spacing thing for him last year, just because the Nuggets were one of the worst three-point shooting teams. They didn't have floor spacers, so he was dealing with dribbling into traffic a lot. So he needs to improve his efficiency at the rim probably more than anything, even more than turnovers. And I think Malone can do a lot of things to help him out with that, primarily playing him with lineups like Gallo at the 4, 2, 3, at least 3 shooters on the court at a time for him. I think he's going to look really good. As I mentioned, they're starting Jokic and Nurkic together through the preseason, and I think not coincidentally, Emmanuel Moutier has looked really bad because him with 2 bigs is probably not the most ideal setup for him just because he can't stretch the floor. And then if he can't get into the paint, he's not nearly as valuable. With Jokic, I think Jokic is an incredible player. I'm so high on Nikola Jokic, and I know a lot of people have kind of come around on him as they've looked at some of the advanced stats and highlights and saw him with Team USA. I think the kid is one of and he's an ideal center for this league. He's a phenomenal passer. I don't think it's a hot take to say he's the best passing center in the league right now. He's comparable and even I think a little bit better than guys like Marc Gasol, Joakim Noah, just because he has those basic elbow passes, post passes, but then he has passes on the run. He could run the break, like a 3-on-3 break, and get a wide open layup out of it. He can, he throws behind the back passes. He's got those Sabonis over the head passes from the post. So I just think he's an incredible player. His thing will be minutes. If he can maintain that consistency for 30 minutes, which I think he can because he was doing it towards the end of the year. Jusuf Nurkic, you mentioned. He needs to help his foul percentage. He averages 6 fouls per 36 minutes last season. I think it was 6.6 per 36 minutes the year before. So he has a foul issue. A lot of those fouls come in transition and out of just being tired. I think this year he's in much better shape. He's a lot slimmer. I think he's going to cut those down, but he's still averaging, I think, somewhere in the preseason even like 4 fouls per game in 25 minutes or so. So he still has to work on that, but if he can cut those fouls out, I think he's going to be an incredible defensive center.
Absolutely. Matt, what's your thoughts?
With Moutier, yeah, like he said, finishing at the rim, can cut the turnovers down, keep improving the shooting. And I'm with him on Jokic. That guy is fantastic. And to add to the passing, he's a guy who can catch it, extended free throw, drive to the cup, and just dump it off to a cutter. If the help comes, he can just dump it off. His passing is fantastic, and he can step out and hit a three. Nurkic, great defensively. With Harris, I think he needs to continue getting better defensively, and working on his shooting to be even more consistent, so he can be your classic 3-and-D guy.
All right.
Absolutely. I agree with all of those points. Nurkic is just going to be, last year he came back from off-season knee surgery. Just want to make sure that he's completely healthy this year. He'll be able to show what he can do, rebounding the ball. Basically, Adam, like you said, just keeping the foul rate down is going to be his biggest concern. Nurkic, as far as defensively, I mean, he's already right there. Offensively, I just want to see him just be consistent and dominate like he did in Rio. Basically get the ball. He can do a variety of things in the post. He can also take you out to the 3-point line. And I think that's rare, especially for a center, especially in the Western Conference. He can definitely take a guy like DeAndre Jordan off the dribble, different things like that. Guys that aren't really going to come out to that 3-point line as often. Gary Harris, it's kind of a unique thing with him because – looking at him, he looks better defensively than I guess what his stats show. It's just going to be, can he stay disciplined on that end? And then, of course, Matt, as you said, keep his shooting at a good rate. And then just coming back healthy. How quick is he going to come back from injury to start the year and just make sure he's in good enough shape?
And let me add one thing about Gary Harris because I actually think he is a top-tier defender already and will get better. But here was the issue with the Nuggets last year. Danilo Gallinari missed 20 games. Wilson Chandler missed the entire season. That means they had to play Gary Harris guarding the best perimeter player, and sometimes that was LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony. Gary Harris can't guard those guys. He's 6'4", I don't know what his weight is, 210 maybe. I mean, he's just too small to guard guys like that, and I think it showed up in his advanced metrics. Even guys like DeMar DeRozan, Andrew Wiggins, they're just too tall for him and too strong for him. So I think this year having those small forwards in the rotation that can cover the bigger guys and just let him guard the point guards and shooting guards, I think he's going to have a tremendous leap in the advanced stats.
Yeah, their backcourt could with Moutier, because Moutier's capable of being a really good defender. They could be really good defensively in the backcourt.
Absolutely. I think that'll be one of the biggest strengths. I think they'll be better defensively than offensively in the near future.
And that's Mike Malone's, basically what he hangs his hat on is his defense. So he'll definitely be happy about that if he can get the guys to.
Yeah, he doesn't have to worry about the backcourt of Isaiah Thomas and Marcus Thornton as your defense.
Yeah. Oof. So going into the next question, basically we all know the expectation for the Nuggets this year is to get into the playoffs in the Western Conference. What will the Nuggets have to do to be able to accomplish this? And then, Adam, where do you see them finishing in the conference?
So I think the playoffs are entirely possible, although I would probably say it's somewhere around 10%. So I don't think they're likely to make the playoffs, but if everything breaks right, they can. And by breaks right, health. Gallo and Chandler need to play a lot of games this year because, as I mentioned, after that there's a big drop-off at just height at the small forward position. Also, having those guys means that they can play these small ball lineups, which I think their small ball lineups are going to be by far their best lineups this year. Gallinari and Wilson Chandler at the 4. So those guys need to stay healthy and play a majority of the games. The Nuggets are going to need to see improvement from Emmanuel Mudiay at the rim, as we mentioned, and just cutting the turnovers and starting to show a leap. Not just a little leap. I think he needs to make a pretty sizable leap. And I actually think he will, despite how bad he's looked in the preseason. I think he'll have a pretty decent year, especially relative to last year. And then thirdly, I think Jusuf Nurkic. They basically didn't have Nurkic last year until the very end of the season because he missed the first 2 months. He was out of shape when he came back and a little bit in Malone's doghouse. The two, Malone and Nurkic, are on the same page by all accounts, and Nurkic has looked phenomenal. I mean, he's been the most impressive Denver Nugget, I think, in the preseason so far. So if he can be a reliable backup center and play a little bit alongside Jokic, maybe for 5 or 10 minutes a game, I think that's going to have a tremendous impact on the Nuggets' win-loss record.
Okay, Matt, what's your thoughts on what they need to do to make the playoffs, and where do you see them finishing?
I'm gonna jump in. Last year, defensive rating, Denver was 23rd, and their offensive rating was 19th. So they're definitely going to have to improve in those two areas if they want to, especially out west. Because I think for the most part, 6 or 7 teams are probably locked in to making the playoffs in the West. I would think there's maybe 1 or 2 spots that could be up for grabs, and the Nuggets can compete. Like Adam said, if everything breaks right for them, the continued improvement of Mudiay, Nurkic, Jokic, those guys, and health, obviously. Gallo and especially Wilson Chandler, he's got to play games this year because he really hasn't played in basically 2 years, and he'll be a big help to that basketball team. But I don't think they'll make it. I've got them finishing, I think, anywhere from 10 to 12 because I think there's a nice little pack there of teams that are right kind of on the same, Phoenix, Denver, teams like that seem to be kind of in the same spot.
Yeah.
One thing, I want to make a point because he brought up a great point about the defensive rating. And, Malone does have a reputation as a defensive coach. Unfortunately, his teams in Sacramento and in Denver have not been very good defensive teams. And they've had the same exact problem. They defend the three-point line really, really, really poorly. Now, I don't want this to become a hot take. He had a very young team in Sacramento. He had an even younger team in Denver. So it's difficult to say, well, he's bad at his schemes are bad because it's not like he had, incredible talents to create a defense. But his point of emphasis, and he's talked about this every day I've seen him at practice and all of his press conferences, defending the three-point line is a point of emphasis. Against the Lakers over the last 2 games, they've allowed 28 and 30 three-point field goal attempts. In the last game, the Lakers made 14 of 28. Many of those shots were wide open. So it's just preseason. They're playing weird lineups. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of noise, and a small sample size. But so far, they look the exact same, at least in terms of taking away the three-point attempts.
I don't blame too much of that when he was in Sacramento. Like, they just did not have guys who were capable of being good individual defenders. That was a bad team. I mean, Rudy Gay, Marcus Thornton, Jimmer Fredette, Isaiah, not defenders. I think he can turn it around because they've got some capable guys. Wilson Chandler, guys like that, Barton, they can get out and defend. I think Jamal Murray will be able to play a little defense too if he puts forth an effort.
Right.
Absolutely, that's going to be the key if he puts effort on the defense.
We don't want a James Harden effort defensively.
And last year with the Nuggets, as I mentioned, not having a small forward for half of the season was a big deal. And so that's why I say I don't want to. It's way too early to say that it's Malone's fault or he has a faulty scheme.
Yeah.
But that's the number one thing I would say I'm keeping my eye on It's just how well they defend the three-point line this year, because this year it would seem that they have a team that's much more capable of being a good defensive unit.
Mm-hmm. And having Gallo back a whole – because he's not bad defensively. He can get out and play some D, yeah.
Yeah, he's good defensively.
He was all when Kobe was in, playing, and he would always guard Kobe when they played the Lakers.
He's like 6'11". I mean, he's a tall dude. He might be the second tallest guy on the Nuggets roster. He's one of those guys that's like a sneaky 6'10", 6'11", because he plays like a guard, but he's enormous.
Mm-hmm.
And he's one of the guys that the Knicks made a mistake when they moved him. I know it's getting mellow, but I was high on Gallinari in New York, and excited that he got his chance in Denver to show what he can do. Going into this season, he's going to be the key for me. Him and Jokic are going to be the two keys to will them to the playoffs. Wilson Chandler being there to get consistent minutes off the bench at the 3 and the 4, he's going to help a lot too, because he can score. His length can allow him at 6'8" to defend. And so that's going to be a big difference. And, of course, health all around is going to be the biggest key. And then looking at Moutier, I want to see him take another leap forward. Make sure to keep those assist-to-turnover ratio down. Make sure to be able to make smart decisions. When you're driving in, you don't have to force your finish at the rim. You've got guys now that you can kick out to on the perimeter that can actually shoot the ball at a consistent measure. So want to make sure he makes the right decisions. And anything they get out of Jamal Murray scoring-wise, of course, is going to be a plus, because he can light it up in a hurry. As far as the playoffs go, I'm actually pretty high on the Nuggets.
Yes.
And I've got them right there sliding into that A spot. I've gotten killed already previous when I've revealed it, many shows back. But I really like Denver and just the combo of players that they have, and I'm really high on Mike Malone as a coach. I think they overtake a team like Minnesota, who maybe is one more year away from making the playoffs. And then the Pelicans, they're going to start out with injuries, and I think they're going to struggle a little bit. And then it's really going to come down to a team like Dallas, that basically able to make or break the Denver making the playoffs kind of scenario. If everything falls right, as you said, Adam, I think they slide into that.
What about – but Pete, I know we're not – what about the Suns? Because we all know the Suns were a borderline playoff team. It was just injuries last year, which is why they were so bad.
Do we know that?
I think so. I think it was because they got off to a decent start last year.
They got off to a decent start by having far and away the weakest schedule through the first 15 games or something. Because I did a big scouting report for Hardwood Paroxysm on them last year, a real deep dive type thing on them, and I like their upside. I like their young guys a lot, but I think that team's record was awfully inflated through the first month, because I think they had 14 of 18 games at home to start the season, and against some of the bottom teams in the NBA.
Yeah. See, but I think it was I think Hornacek's first 2 years, they were right there, 41 and 41. So I'm wondering, injuries hurt them last year. Can they be in that? I mean, I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but I think they can be, because they've got a lot of talent.
And let me interject real quick, Adam. Matt is a huge Devin Booker fan. Huge.
Yes.
So, he's a smart guy, because that kid's incredible. I mean, I think him and D'Angelo both are going to have not necessarily breakout years, because they're on everybody's radar, but I think they're going to have everybody's going to be paying attention to them very closely by the end of the season. Maybe by the middle of the season or early parts of the season.
I think people are paying attention to Booker right now.
Yeah.
And we're going to preview the Phoenix Suns this Saturday, so we'll get to talk about them in depth. But I do think Denver is
sorry for derailing the conversation.
No. I think that Denver is going to be a much better team than Phoenix. I just think Phoenix is a couple pieces away from making the playoffs. I think that a guy like Brandon Knight, they say that he's going to be the great sixth man. How well is he going to want to come off the bench? For the entire year. So, and we'll dive more into them, on Saturday. But that's just my thoughts as far as Denver versus Phoenix for right now. But Adam, give me 3 keys that you think could either make or break the Nuggets this season.
We kind of talked about these a little bit, but the health thing is big. One of the things about when I factor in the Nuggets' likeliness to make the playoffs is that it really depends on how likely you think it is that Gallo and Chandler are going to be healthy. I think there's a really good chance that neither are healthy. There's a really good chance that one of them is healthy and one of them isn't. So the chance that both of them stay healthy for 70-plus games this year, depending on how you gauge that is probably how you project the Nuggets. But health will be one thing that can derail them. Defending the three-point line is another thing that can derail them. And then I'm going to give you a third one that's maybe – this is my own personal opinion, and I'm kind of on an island on this amongst the Nuggets, writing community. But Malone – I'm really worried about Malone and his rotations and what he likes and doesn't like, because I really think he might like this Jokic-Nurkic combo a little too much, in my opinion. I think it takes away a lot of Jokic's skill set. So and I think Jokic should be the focal point of the team. I think he's that good already that he should be the guy that they're throwing the ball to most often, not to score, but just to kind of initiate the offense. So if they're playing Jokic, if 50% or more of his minutes are alongside Nurkic, I think the team they're going to take a step back because I just don't think that's an ideal setup. And then another thing about Nurkic, his minutes are very loud minutes. He's averaging a double-double in preseason. He had, 20 points and 16 rebounds yesterday. I don't think they're empty stats by any means, but I don't think they're as valuable necessarily as, Jokic will go in and put up something like 12 and 8, and it'll be more impactful for the Nuggets because the Nuggets offense is humming and it's moving and the defense isn't slowing things down with fouls. So I would say Malone's lineup combinations will be another key to whether this team, I think, sinks or swims this year.
Okay. Matt, give me some keys.
Obviously health. Don't really need to touch on that much. And then, like I said earlier, improving on the defensive rating. You finish 23rd, you're probably not going to have a chance to make the playoffs. And as Adam said, the big thing, the 3-point defense, cut down on that, and maybe they'll have a much better chance. And then third, I'd say offense. They were 19th offensive rating, and especially making outside shots. Spreading the floor for guys like Moutier to be more effective. Because, as Adam said, this is kind of the guy they want to be the face of the franchise. So get that, make some shots so you can open the floor up for him to do what he does best.
Yeah. I think the only one that hasn't been thrown out there for me is consistency. Just showing on both ends of the floor. These are young guys. So is Jokic and Will Barton especially going to be able to show consistency from last season? Is Nurkic coming back healthy? Is he going to be able to dominate through the season and stay consistent? Even a Kenneth Faried, is he going to be a consistent energy guy, or is he going to, be hit or miss some games as far as, on the defensive end? We all know he can rebound. He's athletic, but defensively, I want to see him bring it consistently. And then when it comes to a guy like Wilson Chandler, consistently staying healthy, he's got to figure out something to keep himself healthy throughout the year, because this guy is going to be huge for them off the bench in a variety of ways. So consistency for me.
Wilson Chandler, just one point about him, he was in the best shape, I think, of his career last year in the preseason. Just looked ripped, was phenomenal, monster dunks in the preseason, and he got injured. I mean, he's a guy that I think – and he got injured, I believe, on like a non-contact type thing. So he's a guy that has either just had really, really bad luck, or he's just a guy that's going to always break down on little things, because it definitely wasn't a lack of effort last year for him, or I think at any point in his career. He's always he says he's a vegan. He's not a guy that I think is out at the clubs ever. I think he's kind of he's a guy that just works on his game and is kind of a quiet guy. So I think he puts the effort in to be healthy. It's just he's had really bad luck.
Yeah. So that brings us to the last question that we have for today. Adam, give me a bold prediction that you have for the Nuggets this year.
It's kind of funny because I don't really have too many bold predictions for the Nuggets. I'm pretty lukewarm on them in terms of like win-loss and what to expect from them. So I don't really have much here much here to offer other than maybe something that people don't realize. I think they'll be a top 5 rebounding team, maybe even a number 1. They've got Nurkic, who he's just a beast on the glass. He's probably one of the 5 strongest guys in the NBA, and when he gets position on the block, you can't move him. He's there. So he's a great rebounder. Jokic is a great rebounder. Gallo, Wilson Chandler, great rebounders. Will Barton, Emmanuel Mudiay. 1 through 5, they have guys that rebound the basketball. So I expect they'll be a top 5 rebounding team. I know that's not the most exciting, bold prediction, but that's all I got from this year.
That's all right. Matt, what's your bold prediction?
Emmanuel Mudiay, most improved player.
Ooh, okay.
I mean, I'd love it. I'd like that to be true. We'll see.
Yeah, we definitely said bold, so for me, I guess if you count my prediction of them making the A seed bold,
that is bold.
But I'm going to go with a different bold prediction for this. I think Wilson Chandler and Danilo Gallinari both play 70 games plus.
Yes.
So
I just knocked on wood like 6 times because I'd love that to happen.
Yes.
I hope so.
When I go bold, I definitely go bold with it. I think if they both can play 70 games healthy, it's a lock for them to make the A seed or possibly even the 7th seed. I don't see them getting higher than the 7th seed, but
they'll be very good if those 2 guys play 70 games this year, 70 or more. The Nuggets will be very, very good.
Absolutely. Well, that will wrap up today's show previewing the Denver Nuggets. Adam, we want to thank you for taking the time to be on with us.
Thank you guys for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely want to have you back during the course of the season. I know you stay consistently busy, but maybe a time or two, maybe middle of the season, we can get you on and just kind of talk about where the expectations are that we kind of predicted and kind of where they're falling, at that point. But let everybody know that's either watching us on YouTube or going to listen to us on iTunes where they can find your work and just kind of some things that you've got going on.
Well, if you're interested for Denver Nuggets news, updates, analysis, what have you, check out denverstiffs.com. It's the largest Denver Nuggets blog on the web. We've got 4 credentialed writers that are at practices and games, so we're covering the team as well as anybody out there. And then this year I'll be writing for vicesports.com. Every week I'll have an in-depth kind of X's and O's with video breakdowns, advanced stats, really, really thorough articles on one team every week. So it'll be a different team. Each week I'll pick a team and kind of dive into them and provide some analysis. And then lastly, the Pickaxe Podcast is our Denver Nuggets podcast over at Denver Stiffs, which I host. And we've had some great guests on from front office personnel with the Nuggets and other writers around the web. So Pickaxe Podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. You just dropped an episode today, I believe, right?
Yeah, I had Anthony Irwin on from Silver Screen and Roll and Locked On Lakers, and we just talked about the Mudiay-Russell rivalry and the matchup and what kind of to expect from those 2 guys. It's kind of a fun one. Nice.
Well, everybody that's watching or listening, go check those out. If you want to check us out, check the replay of this show or any of the other podcasts, you can go to our YouTube page. We encourage you to, of course, like the videos, subscribe to our page. Also, hop on iTunes. Download us there, Unquestionably Raw Podcast. You can also subscribe to the podcast so you get the automatic downloads. And leave us a review. And, of course, spread the word so we can get more and more likes and get people that are kind of basketball nerds such as ourselves kind of on the hype train. So that leaves us with our next shows. We're continuing the NBA season previews for the Western Conference. Wednesday evening this week, we've got 8 p.m. Eastern. We're previewing the Minnesota Timberwolves. Friday, we've got the LA Lakers. And then Saturday, we're previewing the Phoenix Suns. So thanks again for checking out the Unquestionably Raw podcast.